Welcome all to the Snail Trail 4x4 podcast. If you like going off-roading in Toyotas, wrenching on Toyotas, camping in Toyotas, and maybe even poking a little bit of fun at Toyotas, and of course, hearing about how fantastic load distribution plates are in Toyotas, then this is the podcast for you. That's right, ladies and gentle ladies. My name is Tyler, and joining me in the studio is Mr. Recovery Expert himself, Mr. Jimmy Jett. How are you?
I wouldn't go that far, but I'm doing well, thank you.
You will be after today's episode.
I definitely learned a lot more about recovery after hanging out with these gentlemen, or this gentleman.
This one?
Not you.
He does have multiple personalities.
Yeah. These, I meant you and him, but really I was trying to exclude you is the situation.
That makes sense. It's what you normally do. So.
Yep.
Jerk. Yeah, man, we have Justin from Factor55 here in the virtual studio today. So let's get through the housekeeping stuff because he talks a lot and we had a lot of fun talking with him.
That we do.
We got to learn a lot about his history. Did you know anything about him before he got into the off-road scene?
No. And to be all honest, I didn't even know he played the sax.
I didn't either.
So
it was a really fun episode chatting with him. Get to learn a lot about Justin, a lot of Factor55, a lot about a lot of their products, recovery tips, what to do in different situations, some of the myths out there about different recovery products and equipment. So really cool thing. We covered the gamut in this episode. So with that, I don't know. Should we even skip the housekeeping stuff they can listen to on another episode?
Yeah, let's just cover a bunch of the housekeeping on the next episode.
Cool.
I think we covered so much in this episode and went in, kind of a very high, somewhat of a higher level of coverage across so many things. If there's something you want to learn more about, I'm fairly certain we could have Justin back on again.
Oh yeah.
So please write us, email us, or hit us up on social media. You can email Jimmy at snailtrail4x4.com or Tyler at snailtrail4x4.com. I watch over Snail Trail 4x4 Instagram. Tyler's on 4x4 Toyota Tyler. Or you can phone in and we'll play that message, 916-345-4744. But if you want to know more about a specific item or a topic or a situation that you came across and want to know like what gear you should be using, write in and tell us. And then after listening to this episode, because we might cover it because we did talk about a whole bunch of stuff.
We did. There's a lot of topics that are going to be thrown at you guys' ear holes here in a couple minutes. So if you want to hear any more, let us know. And we'll talk back, get back in touch with Justin and see if we can track him down on his next road trip. So cool, man.
Cool. Let's get into it.
All right. So go ahead and grab your favorite lattes. Grab some. Did I know that we're getting some Oreo flavored popcorn?
I just had a cookie dough coffee from Starbucks or from Dutch Bros.
Dutch Bros?
But what people should really be grabbing is some percolated coffee.
Yes. Grab your favorite percolated coffee and we'll be right on back with a really cool episode with Justin from Factor55. Welcome back, ladies and gentle ladies, to today's campfire discussion. We have here live in the middle of somewhere. We're not sure quite where he is.
He's outside of Iowa, somewhere in the middle of Iowa.
I'm outside of Des Moines.
So pretty much middle of nowhere. We have Justin here from Factor55. Justin, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing really good, man. Thanks for having me on. I've been very excited to finally link up with you guys for a long time. So super stoked to be here and appreciate you asking me to come on.
Yeah, dude. This has been a long time coming. Excited to have you on finally and get to sit here and talk about one of my favorite topics other than ham radio, which is recovery equipment and recovery physics and kind of the story behind you and Factor55 in general. I think it's going to be a really fun talk here. Let's start with you, shall we?
Oh, sure.
Who are you? Who's the man behind the mask here? I think when people think of a person associated with Factor55, they think of Justin. They think of you. I think that goes a lot to talk about how much you're out there with everybody, doing a bunch of the grassroots stuff, seeing people, talking to people. I'm curious, like, where did you come from? How did you get into doing recovery equipment? What is your story, this path that led you down to eventually what turned into Factor55?
Well, what's so crazy about that is when I basically how this all happened is I wanted to graduate high school. I went to college for music. And while I was going to school for music, I ended up starting to play in a band, and we were on tour, constantly, and Warped Tour, and gotten to play and open for bands like Dropkick Murphys and Rancid and Less Than Jake and you name it. So I did the whole majority of my 20s was all just on the road and playing shows and doing the music thing. And I really thought that was going to be like my whole life, right? I was just bartending and was just kind of that's everything I did. It was my whole life. And it wasn't until 9/11 I went to go try to get in the military. And I had always kind of wanted to do that, but it was kind of that time where there was a big rush. I think a lot of patriotism. I think in our country at that time. Anyway, I was just turning. I just turned 21 at the time, and tried to get in the military, and I couldn't. I had already had both full sleeves done. I'd already, because I was playing in a punk rock band, dude, on tour, and so I got denied access into the military. But I always wanted to be involved in the ocean and with boats and that kind of thing. So I actually got during this time. We had a little hiatus with my band. I actually got certified for scuba, and then went all the way to become a dive instructor. And so I was teaching scuba, and then I took a job working for Lahaina Divers out in Maui after '08 when the recession happened. When stuff wasn't working out there, I ended up moving back to Idaho. So the long and short of it is when I moved back to Idaho, I bought a Jeep and was like, I'm going to take the doors off and be a cool guy and I'd go camping. It's going to be so rad. And literally, man, one of my best friends was all, hey, man, you ever heard of King of the Hammers? And I was like, what's that? That sounds crazy. And then never did I think I would end up on the lake bed every year for the rest of my life, right? It really started where this whole thing was, I'm so jealous of guys like you and dudes that have grown up around off-roading like their whole lives, because it has given me in the last decade so much opportunity that it all just came from the fact that I bought a Jeep and a friend of mine was like, we should go take this thing out, see what it does, to turning into being now working for this company, and then now being here for almost 10 years and now being part of the Warren family of brands. So yeah, man, that's kind of how it all started.
So what was the transition from you going off-roading and King of the Hammers to starting to do recoveries and working with Factor55? Or was it even Factor55 at that time?
Yeah. So a great question. So Mike Costa, is the president and founder of Factor55. So Mike was a mechanical engineer. He went to Cal State Fullerton. Used to work for Ford Aerospace and Lam Research. And dude, he was wheeling the Rubicon back in the early 80s with Chris Collard and Steve Sasaki. And Mike's got one of the original Marlin crawler boxes that Marlin actually signed that's in his Toyota crawler.
Nice.
It's, what I'm saying? So there was this leg. So a lot of people don't know that. Mike was, working for these huge engineering companies, working on military satellites and semiconductors and all these things. He was still actively wheeling the Rubicon constantly, and he has an 83 Hilux long bed where he narrowed a Dana 60 and a Dana 70 on 40s dual transfer cases up underneath this thing. And hearing the stories of that guy having to go around the hot rod shops and look up information in the phone book to put 37-inch tires on a vehicle in 1985 is crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So Mike always had this idea in his mind over the years where he knew that hooks, were a failure point when it came to winching, and they weren't a really safe connecting point when you think about using shackles or D-rings, these types of things for safer rigging connections. So he always in the back of his mind had this idea of, essentially what became the ProLink. And so he started to develop this product, work through the design of it. And when he moved to Idaho, he started kind of getting the first articles of those parts made. He had the business was around for probably about 8 months or so by the time I had come across it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just moved back to Idaho, bought this Jeep, got super obsessed with Jeeping and off-roading, and started, and just like anything else, like when I got certified for scuba, I went all the way up to getting an instructor. You know what I mean? When I was playing music, we had a full business and we were on a band on tour. I mean, I get involved in something and get obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Just like off-roading. I finally get an off-road vehicle, you get a bumper. Well, you got to put a winch on the bumper.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you got to accessorize the winch. It's like, you know what I mean? You got to learn how to use all the tools that you're using.
Mm-hmm.
And we started looking around, and like you started seeing vehicles like the Genrite builds or Terraflex or any of these other Jeeps that had these thimbles on the end of them. And I remember seeing the personalities at the time in our industry that were big. Larry McRae, right, from Poison Spider,
Mm-hmm.
or Tony from Genrite, or Dennis Wood from Terraflex. Any of these guys that had all these parts in the front of their vehicles. And I was like, well, if those dudes are pros in our industry, right, I want to be a pro too and use pro equipment. So I'm going to look into this. Factor55, Boise, Idaho. I live here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, So I went down and I hustled around. I found Mike, and I think I had probably been wheeling for only about a year and a half at that point. And it was kind of just right place, right time. And about 3 or 4 months after meeting him, he hired me. And I was the first employee there, and I've been with the company the longest.
Wow.
Pretty crazy. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to back up a little bit here. I have some questions.
Oh yeah. I'm here to chat away, my man. Let's do it.
What was the name of your band?
It was called the Percolators.
The Percolators?
Yeah, the
It.
Percolators. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Did you guys just drink a ton of coffee or what?
Yeah, see, now that's the right answer. So you meet so many people who be like, oh, bro, is that like a percolating bong? Like, no. It's not. No. Yeah, so we actually had this thing called, it was the Sacred Percolator. So it looked like a sacred heart, but it had a percolator in the middle of this big light raid heart and everything. It was part of our band logo. And it was badass, man. It was a very fun time in my life. And and in fact, you can actually, from the very first year I went to King of the Hammers. So I played the saxophone, which was I went to college for music for. And from the very first KOH I went to, there was a pirate thread that was like, yeah, that Factor55 company, they're okay, but that dude needs to stop playing the saxophone on the lake bed.
That's funny.
So that's when I knew I was like instantly making a splash, right? I'm like,
yeah,
what's up, guys?
So it was a punk band with a saxophone?
Yeah, ska. Yeah, we were a ska punk band.
Ska.
Right?
Ska, nice.
Ska
Okay.
punk, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Did you serve coffee at your venues when you were playing?
You know what? I should have. We should have. Thinking now what we deal with, right, with our influencers and our sponsorships and our brand ambassadors, the amount of stuff that I could have done to really capitalize off of that back then would have been fantastic. I could have been like the first Overland coffee brand. Who would have known? It would have been great.
Yeah. The ska percolators. Yeah. That's cool. So you played saxophone. Do you still have all your sax skills?
Oh yeah, 100%. Man. I still do studio, dude. I still do studio work on the side, and I mean, I'll tell you what. If you guys ever want to make some funny video and do like a sexy sax man thing playing a Careless Whisper, you let me know. I'm totally down.
All right, we'll get you some American flag undies or something, and you can go and do the morning salute.
We can do a pro link on a chain hanging around you.
Oh, see? I like the way you guys think. That's just good marketing. This is free marketing. For anybody listening, this is free marketing advice. That would be amazing.
Oh man, yeah, we're gonna be expecting Overland Expo next year to have a saxophone interlude for the wake up call.
And I think that now more than ever, I think that those are some of the things with us. I think everybody has personalities in our industry, right? It's so many people that get involved here, and I mean, you realize like at the end of the day, like brands are really good, but you will always buy quality parts from quality people.
Yep.
And I think it matters so much more to have like good integrity about how you have fun and treat yourself that way. And I think that there's, I think that I'm finally getting a little bit more flexibility, I should say, to have a little bit more fun with what this is, because sometimes this job, and look, vehicle recovery is dangerous, and we'll touch on that, of course. But I think that there still has to be a little bit of humor and kind of being like infotained, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
To make it to where, especially with the younger generation of people now coming into our industry. And so it's got to be, we as in general have to touch on to so many things as far as the company. And the reason why I've never done things just like this, the little fictitious scenario we're talking about before is only because I'm just saying, like, we've had this position where, it's serious business, but there's also still got to be an element of fun.
Absolutely. I think that goes along kind of hand in hand with the industry that we're in. I think that there's too many people that I don't think there's enough people, honestly, that are making sure they incorporate fun into what we're doing every day. And the whole industry is based around fun, right? We're going out and recreating with vehicles and we're trying to have fun. I wish that more companies, especially some of the bigger ones that are kind of more conscientious of what they're putting out in terms of keeping everything PC, that I wish we could see more companies having fun out there in advertising and marketing in our industry.
I completely agree. I mean, look, dude, your glue tread video, you're right. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's just like, and then you're like, well, what about the sign? Well, in the comment section, like, whatever, bro. Like, we stabbed a tire and went wheeling on the Rubicon.
Yeah.
What more do you need to know?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? That's it. Story.
Yeah. That's going to be a really fun video when it comes out. I'm excited to see how it turns out. The guy took a lot of really cool footage. Yeah, dude. So,
that's phenomenal, man.
Yeah. So did you actually ever get to serve in the military, or were they just looking at your sleeves and like, nope, not allowed?
Yeah. So that's a crazy thing. So initially, I always wanted to join the Coast Guard. It's always what I wanted to do.
What was the draw to the Coast Guard? Was it, were you looking to be a rescue swimmer, helicopter pilot? What are you looking to do there with the Coast Guard? What was your draw?
Honestly, it was just, I wanted to live near the ocean, right? Be by the water and work on boats. And I was always kind of fascinated by that. And like, I always tell people now too, like, even with the scuba stories, the joke has been like, it still counts as off-road. Right. So
True.
it's just so I always liked the idea of just, the travel by water and I grew up watching Cousteau, at the end of like every Sunday night, you would see like, there was always an episode of either like, Jack Hanna's Wild Kingdom, right. Or the Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau. And then that led into like the Disney Channel movie that used to play on NBC every Sunday. And so as a kid growing up, this is something I was always in the back of my mind, fascinated with. And my entire family, every generation of dude in my family served in the military. And so I always thought, well, you know what, I'm going to give the music thing a try when I graduated high school. And when I got a full ride to Boise State, it was kind of like, oh man, well, I'm actually pretty talented at this. I'm going to pursue this kind of avenue. But in the back of my mind, I always thought, if this never really works out in the way that I think it will, I'd probably do some kind of career-wise with the military. And so for me, that draw to the water, wanting to be around the ocean, that kind of thing was always something I really, really, really wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And then after 9/11, there was a bunch of regulations that got instituted in the military, and I had both of my sleeves tattooed beforehand. And they had changed the regulations that if you had a tattoo between your elbow and your wrist, if you couldn't cover up that tattoo on your forearm, basically meeting 25% of your forearm or less, you were instantly disqualified.
Wow.
And so for 10 years, from when I was 21 until I was 31, I wrote letters. I submitted all kinds of shit to my senator, trying to get in. I went to MEPS twice. For those who don't know, that's a military entry processing station. So after you take your ASVAB, you go do your physical and do these things. And so I wear contacts, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm actually -9 in my left eye. And for myopia, which is nearsightedness for military entry, the worst you can be is -8. So I needed a medical waiver in order to join the military because of one negative power in my left eye, and the MEPS in Boise wouldn't give it to me. Wow. And so it became this whole thing where like I did everything I could, all the points where I aged out of an opportunity to even get in. Mm-hmm. It was pretty heartbreaking, man, because I would have been damn good at that job, right? I still, even now, so fast forward, my son just graduated high school this last month. He's 18, and he's joining the Coast Guard. It's crazy. Yeah, it's full circle, man. Who would have thought? It's neat to see, man. And even when I went in and took him in to meet the recruiter, the guy was like, yeah, man, we're hurting bodies, blah, blah, blah. I was like, you give me an age waiver, man, I'll leave right now. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, I'll leave tomorrow. Dude, he showed me this picture of him on an ice sheet in Antarctica on an icebreaker. You know what I mean? That they spent 21 days in Antarctica. Right? You know what I mean? It's a serving part of their mission. Are you kidding me? I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Have you gotten to travel around a lot of the world? I don't know how much did you make it around with the music career there?
Most of it was in the U.S. It wasn't until actually I had my passport for like 10 years. And, you know, at that time, you didn't need it to get into Canada or Mexico, right? But so now, like, when I met my wife, she's the one she's addicted to Google Flights, right? So now when I sit around, like, I remember she came up to me and said, hey, like, we should go to Iceland. And I was like, oh, yeah, that would be cool. And it was always one of those things where I'm like, oh, no, it'd be cool. I'll go there one day. And then she's like, no, I bought the plane tickets. Like, we're going to Iceland. And I was like, oh, dope, man. So now it's like, now in the later years of my life, that's what we're doing. We love to travel and love to do that. So, you know, we've been into Europe and in the UK. We actually, the last major trip pre-COVID that we went on was we went to the UK to go see the Spice Girls.
Oh, that would be a heck of a concert.
Bro.
Oh, that's great.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
That's fun. That's super fun.
Was that the reason you went to the UK, was for the Spice Girls?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I love it.
So my wife was born in 91, right? So for a little girl growing up in Idaho, like the Spice Girls is the greatest thing in the world, right? And it was just meant everything to her. So when they announced the reunion show, I mean, she bought the VIP tickets and the whole thing, man. So we went to Edinburgh, Scotland to go see the Spice Girls. It was awesome.
That's so cool. That's actually something that my wife and I have been talking about, because my wife really loves concerts and going to see live performance of music. And I really enjoy traveling. And so we were talking about actually doing that same exact sort of scenario where let's find a band that is from another country that is playing a show in that country, and, you know, and go and visit it.
Go there. Yeah, man. It's the best. It's the best thing because, you know, so many times I think we as backcountry travelers, and we're nomadic in our spirits, in our heart, and who we are as people. And I think that's what draws us together to try to, you know, get through these trail systems and use these tools and our knowledge base to try to finish the mission of getting off of a trail. And typically we go to places that no one will ever see, right? Places that no one will ever get to, places that people don't even want to hike into because our vehicles are allowing us the opportunity to get farther in the backcountry than you can just simply by foot. And so when we go to these other places, like, look, man, like museums and all this stuff, it's pretty cool. Right? It's cool to see the history and the neat things about these places, but I mean, how many photos do you need? Like, I can go to the Eiffel Tower in France, snap one photo, and that's it. I don't need to spend a lot of time there. I would rather go and find the guys that are building Ultra 4 cars, you know what I mean, in Europe, and go talk to those dudes and see where they're wheeling at. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's one thing I always try to apply is like, anytime we go anywhere we're either going to go scuba or surfing or off-roading somewhere, wherever we travel.
Where's the best place you've been scuba diving at?
Honestly, man, it was the last trip when we went to Iceland. I actually dove in the Thingvellir National Park, which is about 45 miles north of Reykjavik. And in the park is a freshwater fissure that deposits glacial runoff. So it takes about 100 years for water to filter through the lava rock and deposit in this freshwater fissure in the middle of the park. And underwater, you can literally touch the North American continent and the Eurasian continent, and you're diving between the tectonic plates.
Wow.
That's cool.
That would be cool.
Were you wearing a dry suit?
Dry suit. Yep. Yeah. The water was 33 degrees in the water, and it's also crystal clear. So you can literally pull the regulator out and drink the water.
Wow.
That's so cool.
That's pretty freaking cool.
It was unbelievable, dude. It was to be in a place that's just so, you know, so beautiful anyway like that. And then to have that type of experience. I mean, we got tattooed while we were there. The whole thing was just awesome. It was a phenomenal experience. And, you know, you look at some of these things where like a lot of people can accomplish a lot of things, but, you know, anybody can go diving in Hawaii, right? Anybody can go jump in warm Caribbean water. But when you're like, it's freezing, there's so much extra gear, it's all this stuff that goes in, you know, it complicates the situation and makes it, you know, more fun if you want to take it to that place. And I think that's what really makes that moment, you know what I mean, so much more satisfying when you get there and do something just like that.
That's the same feeling I get going snow wheeling in blizzards. One of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, man, exactly. Right. A lot of people are like, that's crazy. I'm never going to do that.
Yeah.
But if you take somebody that's ready, that's gotten to that level, you know, I mean, it's life changing. It really is.
That's cool. Yeah, we were, I was looking at supposed to be going to Iceland for our honeymoon, and then COVID shut the world down. So we never got to go, but I think we're going to have to try and remake a trip to get out there. So.
Oh, dude, you let me know when you want to go, and me and my wife will join you. I'll tell you that much. It's
perfect. It'll be a greatest double date ever.
Dude, I'm telling you, dude, it is absolutely worth it. It is 100%. And like, you look, Arctic Trucks is over there. And dude, they do the glacial tours with those big ass, like 54-inch tires. And there's so much cool stuff that's all around the world, right? And it's time for, you know, seize those moments while you can.
Yeah, for sure.
So do you still take your saxophone to King of the Hammers?
Yeah, so I get asked that almost every event I go to, like, because it started off as like this really kind of funny joke, and I used to bring it to Easter Jeep Safari. So we have old videos where like I'm hanging out the side of the Jeep and like playing it like up Hell's Gate and the whole thing. And so, you know, and I was trying to, you know, just kind of have some fun with it or whatever. And I think there was a real definitive time where it got into a point to where, you know, as a small company from Idaho, and as we were building the brand and you know, going through, you know, building our sales and doing this stuff, I mean, there was a lot of seriousness that really took place in what we were doing as a company. And so, you know, you have to really find that line. I think there's a lot of companies out there that do a really good job about still keeping it, you know, really enthusiast driven. But then sometimes, you know, you have to find that real line of where is it too funny, right? And a lot of people aren't going to get the joke, right? But sometimes it's not funny enough. Right. So it's, you know, comedy can be very powerful in that way. Yeah. And so, and also to make it like, you know, like if I brought it on the Rubicon, you know, it'd be one of those things where, you know, we're having a jam session at night. Well, that becomes, now that's fun and serious. So it's also, where's the balance? Right. So I still will bring it out sometimes where, I've got a couple great videos where I was playing Careless Whisper for like Nicole Johnson and, Jesse Combs. And like, you know what I mean? I would jump out from behind Jeeps and do ridiculous things like that at some of these events. So I need to do it more often. And I think maybe soon enough, my friend, I may have the availability to do just that. So just you wait.
I'm going to be waiting. I'm going to be waiting for all the videos to show up.
I'm a little worried, actually.
Well, look, man, I was thinking to myself, man, hell, dude, Sublime with Rome was playing at KOH last year, right?
Yep.
Come on, man, put me on stage, bro. Let me do this. Yes. I'll sit in.
You just bring your saxophone and just walk up on stage like you own the place with them and start jamming.
Dude, I fully will do that.
Oh, man.
Kick me out of that place.
Right. So let's transfer over here to a little bit about Factor55, because what I think that you guys have done extremely, extremely well is there's a lot of things out in the market that function great. And then there's also some things that look great, but don't necessarily function too well. There's things that function really well, but don't look very great. And you guys have found this beautiful balance of design and function. And it really started and kind of kicked off with the ProLink, right?
Yeah. So the first product that Mike actually ever came up with was the winch lock bolt.
The winch lock bolt?
Yeah, the winch lock bolt. Most people don't even know, most people don't even know what that part is, but it's a security bolt to help prevent your winch from being stolen. Right. Okay. And so that part, even to this day, is the only product that we make that is imported. But that product is part numbers 00001. That's the very first part that he designed and came up with.
Wow.
And then he clearly got in that scenario and was like, you know what, like, this is kind of just a security device. It's just a simple little thing, but it's literally the only part that we do. It's the only thing we don't make in America.
Yeah.
And the ProLink, the initial concept of that was basically designed to use with steel cable. That's what it came from. Steel cable was still really prevalent with most of the winches, and some safety thimbles already existed if they were spliced onto the end of the winch ropes, right? From companies like Masterpole, Viking Off-Road, or any of these things. But the problem there was a lot of guys didn't know how to splice winch line. And then the other thing is the winch line was always left exposed on the front end of that thimble. So the first rock you run it into would damage the rope.
Oh, interesting. So it was more for a cable protection than it was necessarily for like a closed system winching then, right?
Well, so the closed system winching part was the key element of the safety aspect, right? Okay. The idea of interfacing a pin to attach to the ends of the winch line and make that type of thimble. That was the inventive thing, right? Because the other types of thimbles that have been in existence before had to splice on directly to the rope. There was never a quick attachment pin to make a mount that would be utilized to create closed system winching. So for those of you who are listening that have never heard that or ever heard of our company before, closed system winching is about eliminating the conventional winch hook up the end of your winch line to provide the interface to using a shackle where you can lock the pin in that shackle in place and contain your load depending on what the rigging scenario calls for. Problem with conventional winch hooks is winch hooks were designed for vertical lifting, where the load would stay centered in the throat of the hook, right, by gravity. But we don't use them for lifting. We use our winches for pulling. Well, when you're pulling off-road, right, you're giving it a little gas, you're trying to crawl up an obstacle, you deal with overrunning your winch, meaning as you're winching in and your tires gain traction, you have the tendency to drive forward and put slack in the winch line. And then if you slip back, then it grabs tension. So you're dealing with this tension and slack in those winching scenarios. And what can happen is those crappy cheap glass winch hooks can get bent, fall off. They can tip load and peel open. And on an average, most conventional winch hooks are only actually rated to 4,000 pounds. And we'll start to see failure as low as 11,000 pounds. So
1,100?
Anybody can put themselves at 11,000 pounds.
Okay.
So if you think about it, all winches are designed where they have steel cable, right? 7/16, right? Steel cable. All that stuff will have a braking strength. The common steel cables that come on winches, all that kind of stuff will have braking strengths anywhere roughly around, 15 to 16,000 pounds. But if you're still running that thing on your 10,000 pound winch, that hook they put on there, they think, okay, well, this should be good enough. But if you find that instantly bursts above those load ratings, and that's where those things can fail. That's where they can open up and shoot back through the window. That's where you get the misuse of guys that are using the winch line as like a tow strap instead of actually for winching. That's what all of our rigging connections tend to eliminate those worries and problems.
Yeah, for sure. That's one thing that I think a lot of people don't look into, maybe understand a whole lot. Maybe you can kind of help define that and help the understanding a little bit more is working load limits versus braking strengths and what safety factors are. Yeah.
So, a working load limit of a product is the repeatable load that a product can see forever, right? So if you take a product and you say its working load limit is 5,000 pounds, you can run that product in whatever configuration of 5,000 pounds forever, and nothing will ever deform it, abuse it, its cycle count rating, blah, 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 whatever. Working load limit is repeatable limit that can be seen on a product over and over and over and over again. Cool. The minimum braking strength is the minimum point that part will fail. So you look at let's use the ProLink, for example. So the ProLink we have rated at 16,000 pounds. We have a destructive failure of that part that's above 40,000 pounds. So what we do with our products is after the parts are designed, they go in a destructive test bed. They get pulled up to 5,000 pounds and then held for 30 seconds, pulled up to 10,000 pounds, right? 15, 20, 25, 30, right? All the way up until ultimate failure. So we do that because we're looking for repeatability in materials. We're looking for load testing to see if there's any, and yielding to see if there's any oblong in the holes or shapes, or if there's any yielding in the material based off the load, until we get all the way to the ultimate strength of the product to see where the actual minimum braking strength will happen. Now, for example, with the ProLink being braking at about 40,000 pounds, we've had some of the ProLinks break at 43 and 45,000 pounds. But if we've got one that breaks at 39.5 and one that breaks at 40, the minimum is going to be 39.5. Even though the average will be somewhere in the upper 40s, the 39.5 is the article. That's the one that comes to. Now, with the aluminum and the materials that we use to machine these parts in particular, you see way more anomalies, right? In plus or minus 10% with synthetic rigging, way more than the billet aluminum. So I just want to make that statement. So our parts are repeatable, consistent. I mean, they're constant. It's the same every time.
Yeah.
Every single time we put one in a test bed, whether it's one that we made 10 years ago or whether it's one that we've made now, because we do that. We'll actually go to people at events and find old parts and trade them out for new ones, and take those old parts and put them in the test bed to see where they break at. And it's literally the same every single time. And that's the advantage of buying consistent materials. That's one of the reliabilities you get by spending your dollars with USA made Kaiser billet aluminum and the titanium double shear pins that we put into all of our product line. So that's kind of where that's kind of a little round basis between the working load limits and minimum braking strengths. Like there are some other recovery companies that are out there. I say air quotes, recovery companies that are out there that will put maximum braking strength. They put maximum braking strength as a label.
Okay.
I don't need to know the max it broke at.
Yeah.
You can tell me it breaks at 40,000 pounds, but what if the minimum it breaks at is 10?
Yeah, right.
That I shouldn't even go near that part. You know what I mean? You look at the conventional winch hook. I think that honestly, there's two things in this scenario. I think the reason why you don't hear so much more about injury and that type of thing when it comes to use of those types of products is simply put, for the people that are actively using their winches a lot, don't really see that great of force, right? Like a Jeep or a rock crawler, that kind of thing, just simply doesn't weigh that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're just not
when
that
you're
heavy.
when you're looking at rigging limits. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you hear a lot more about this stuff when it comes into heavier trucks or industrial applications because it gets used more often and you're dealing with greater forces. Most of our rock crawlers and stuff are pretty simple, right? So there's that element. And I think it's also the fact that like the vehicles are so capable that a lot of wheelers just don't use their winches. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And I think that one of the advantages with our product line in that scenario is, especially now where synthetic winch line is so much more common. You know, I get people come up to me at events all the time. They're like, "Oh, hey man, I got one of your parts, but I've never had to use it." And I'm like, "Yo, dude, like that's why the parts have integrated rubber pads, because they go up against the fair lead surface. So it's protecting it. So there's no metal to metal connection. It's storing your winch line behind the fair lead surface to fully protect that rope until you actually need to use it." Those are some of the basic elements of the designs of these products that I think a lot of people miss. That it's not just about the use and safer rigging connections, but it's also that 90% of its life, you're not going to use it. And it's going to sit on the front of your vehicle. So if that's going to be the case, not only does it have to function well, but it also has to look good, because you want to have an improvement to what it is, right?
Yeah, totally.
That's just the simple basis of it. So when you say, you know, like you said earlier, when it goes good and looks good, you don't find that very often, man, when it comes to a lot of product lines. So that's why it's something to be, I think that a lot of people miss with our parts, especially in the element of the winch line shackle mounts, that those things are really, it's about repeatability of materials, knowing the fact that you're getting the reliability because of the USA quality source materials that those parts are manufactured out of. And the fact that, like, dude, 90% of its life, it's living on the front of the fair lead. So it's protecting the fair lead surface from being damaged. So when you need that lifeline and when you need that safe recovery tool, it's ready to go at a moment's notice.
Yeah, for sure. When people are looking at adding a Pro Link or an Ultra Hook or something to their vehicle, and they see something like load ratings or working load limits or braking strength or a safety factor of 5x or maximum braking strength versus minimum braking strength, what are the things that people should kind of be watching for and looking for when looking at recovery equipment to add to their vehicle?
Oh, geez. I think that the number one thing is that first and foremost, you should be looking for quality ratings and manufacturing and where it's made. And just in general, source materials are a real problem. There's great quality companies that are USA made products. So it's not just ours, right? And you can honestly get away with doing a lot of dumb stuff with, you know, inferior equipment. You can, but it's about the repeatability for the next time.
Yep.
Even when we teach recovery classes, I never say never, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, what works is what counts. Like I just had an experience this last week. We were just at the Smoky Mountain Jeep Invasion in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just went wheeling at Windrock for the last 2 days. And so you can get away with a lot of dumb stuff with inferior equipment, right?
Yeah.
But if you're really looking for something that is designed for life safety and something that's designed to really work when it needs to,
Mm-hmm.
that's, I think, more the key to look for. Look for load ratings. Look for, look for those working load limits and braking strengths being called out. Where was it made? What are the manufacturing capabilities? So we have material lot traceability on the raw aluminum that we use, Kaiser. And then we also even have lot traceability on the webbing material and off of the Dyneema fibers that our soft shackles and all that stuff is made of. That's why every single part we sell has got an individual serial number for material lot traceability, because we're selling to the military and the government and search and rescue worldwide.
Yeah.
So it's not just about like, oh, I can get this on Amazon cheaper. Well, dude, you are putting not only your vehicle and your life in danger, but anybody else that's around you wheeling. Because it might hold 1 or 2 times. I'm not saying that it may not, but it also may fail the first time that you shock load it.
Yep.
Because whoever it was, from whatever factory, from wherever across the world, like, do you know the reliability of the experts that were working with that material? Did they splice it correctly? Did they bury the tail of the rope deep enough? And there's so many things that go into play here, and it's just not worth the risk, right? There's certain things you can save some money on, but safety equipment is not one.
I 100% agree. When you're talking about the forces that are put into play when you're doing a vehicle recoveries, especially, something gets bound up and you get a differential or skid plate or a lower link bracket stuck on a rock while you're winching. There's a lot of kind of built up forces in that system, that recovery system that you're building up that could fail catastrophically. And there was a great video that, who was it? Ronnie Dahl did a long time ago about tow balls. And he was trying to prove that you should not, do any kind of recovery off of tow balls on receiver hitches. And he had to hit it 4 or 5 times in order to get the tow ball to just shear off and go flying to the point where I want to say it went through the vehicle's radiator and into the engine block. And then people were like, oh, he took him 5 times. He couldn't break it. That means they're just safe. And it's like, no, it's the repeatability aspect of, if something is going to fail, you want it to not fail and you need it to be repeatable. I think that's something that a lot of people overlook. It's like, it took him, he wasn't able to break it on the first one, but he broke it. He still broke it, and only on the 5th try. I mean, how many people have you seen trying to recover people on tow balls and have to take 5 pulls just in one recovery? So I think that the repeatability aspect and knowing the materials you're dealing with and having lot traceability, I didn't realize you guys did that. That's huge. That's a big aspect that goes behind the equipment you use when dealing with recoveries that we deal with in the off-roading world.
Well, it also speaks high volumes for your company of that you guys truly care about the material and the product. And you continue to do these tracing on where the material is coming from for you guys to build these outstanding products.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly. Look, I'll give you a couple of examples.
Mm-hmm.
One, like in the scuba world, like when I work in dive shops and sell dive equipment and do that kind of stuff. And so it's an interesting industry in that sense where if you come into the dive shop and you're not a certified diver, like you didn't take a class and you didn't get your open water certification, I can't sell you equipment. It's legally something that they do in the industry that they will not sell you the equipment because you could go kill yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Getting underwater and be able to do this. But there's nothing stopping any person from walking into a Sportsman's Warehouse or a Cabela's to buy a 12,000 pound weight, bolt it on their truck, and just start starting to use it and moving stuff around in their yard. Right. So there's nothing that's stopping anybody. They can literally buy a product that they can kill themselves with zero training. Yeah. Right. And
that's
so
like
part of it only comes
too.
into, dude, exactly.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I think we've been able to do as a company is provide as much safety factor into all of the products that we design and manufacture to try to, to keep people safe in no matter what kind of backcountry travel or experience they want to have.
Yeah, describe safety factor real quick for those that don't know what it is.
So a lot of companies, so in the overhead lifting world, right, every piece of equipment is done in a safety factor. The industry standard is pretty much a factor of 5, which means that if it's 5 times whatever the working load limit is. So if you have, right, so that's why you hear like, well, it's a 5-to-1 or it's a 3-to-1. Kind of similar to when we're talking about mechanical advantages, right? With pulley systems and snatch blocks and things, they'll have a 5-to-1 safety factor. So if you have a 5,000 pound winch, or excuse me, a 5,000 pound working load limit, it'd be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. 5 times 5 is 25,000. So you'd have a 25,000 pound braking strength, right?
Gotcha.
So that's one of the things where like we only sell USA made Crosby shackles because those are certified for overhead lifting. So even though they have a 4 3/4 ton or 9,500 pound working load limit, they don't see destructive failure until above 55,000 pounds. So that safety factor is built into that product to give you that reliability. So you'll see that on all the straps and soft shackles and everything we manufacture, that most of the equipment will have a 5-to-1 safety factor. Now with the Pro Links and the flat links and the whole winch line shackle mount stuff, they will have typically a 2 or 3-to-1 safety factor. And mostly because it's just to simply eliminate confusion. Whereas somebody can see a Pro Link and go, okay, well, you have a rating here of 16,000 pounds as a working load limit. Well, it's because over double that, just over 2-to-1 is where it'll fail, above 40,000 pounds. But the rope that attaches to that product, like the 3/8 conventional winch line, which is pretty much the standard side winch rope on any winch that comes on, that breaks between 18 and 22,000 pounds. The Pro Link breaks at above 40.
Yeah.
The rope is always going to be the failure point, and that's what you want.
Yeah. That's another thing I think a lot of people don't realize is you have all these great rigging interfaces, as you mentioned, but usually the fuse in any rigging system is going to be your rope or your steel cable. That's going to be the weak link of it. So usually if you can make sure that you're watching that, especially with synthetic rope, because it tends to degrade more over time, as long as you're watching that and you understand that, then you can build your rigging systems kind of around that with that in mind, I guess.
Samson Rope actually has an entire test study that you can read through. I mean, you want to bore yourself to death? Go and read some like scientific data on Cordage. Like it'll melt your mind, right? So they have a whole deal where like, so Dyneema fibers, right? This ultra high molecular weight polyethylene that those rope fibers are made out of, depending on the type of quality, the UV degradation within as little time as 1 year can affect the breaking strength of that rope as much as 20%. Wow. So just from it sitting out in the sun for, for a year, degrade your braking strength by 20%. So now you look at that and go, okay, well, if I have a 20,000 pound braking strength on my line, it's now going to only break at 18, right? I'm going to take 2 right out of it. You got to think about like how, like you especially see it in Florida when we go to places like that, right? When you're dealing with salt air and dry rot. I mean, it's like that rope is designed for the marine industry, and those types of guys and those types of, in those situations, that rope gets replaced all the time because it has to, because it degrades. Yep. So it's a very interesting scenario that gets put together there, man. It's, it really needs to be, I think, addressed a lot more often. And most people, I think, are pretty frugal when it comes to their equipment, just because, wheeling can be an expensive hobby. But there are certain things that need to be addressed and looked at to go like, look, man, that's why most rigging companies in general have a 5-year lifespan on equipment. One thing that's also featured on all of our straps is not only serial numbers, but also manufacturing dates. And so what'll happen is if you have a brand new strap and it's been on the shelf for 5 years and never even been used, most companies will take that strap and just that it's gone. It's time to get a new one.
Interesting.
It's qualified lifespan. So when I see guys are like, oh man, I had this chain and I've been using it for 40 years. That's my bag. Wow, man. I'm like, oh my God. Like it just, that kind of stuff scares the crap out of me.
Yeah. So let's answer all of life's problems right here and now. Steel or synthetic winch line?
No, synthetic rope, 100%.
Okay. So here's the question. I know that the large portion of the off-roading industry has moved over to synthetic line. And I think that there's a good reason for it all. I'm just curious, is it all just because it won't kill you when it breaks, or are there other reasons for it as well? Or is there scenarios where steel is better than synthetic?
Well, I will say this, there are still scenarios where steel can be a better component than synthetic winch line. A lot of it is like for fire trucks and fire application, right? So fire trucks in general, ultra high molecular weight polyethylene, Dyneema, like Spectra, all these different types of fibers that these ropes are made out of, they can't deal with heat, right? They start to totally deteriorate about 150 degrees. So if you think about like a winch on a brush truck in a fire, that guy was going to roll the winch line out and try to like winch something or a car or vehicle over open flame. Yeah. Not going to work. No. Not going to work. But the steel cable could be able to deal with that, right? Or something where like even right now, our Mike has still got steel cable on his rock crawler because we're in Idaho in the high mountain desert, and there's a lot of rocks, and so there's a lot of things where that the synthetic winch line does not like to deal with abrasion. It doesn't want to. Once it's under load, it can be easily cut around sharp edges or that type of thing. That's something to always be aware of as well. So he would still prefer to winch around a corner and drag a cable through rocks because it lasts longer in that sense. Now, the disadvantages are when steel cable lets go, it carries a ton of force. And then that's when people can get really injured or killed. Yep. Whereas synthetic rope, it does not fall to the ground. It will fall in line of the load where it's at. But it would, if you were to get hit by it, it would probably just welt you instead of kill you. Yeah. Yeah, agreed 100%. I think that's another kind of a myth about synthetic lines. I hear a lot of people say, oh, it'll just fall to the ground. I'm like, no, there's still some force. There's still definitely some force there. There's a lot of force. Yeah. There's a lot of force. Yeah. There's just not as much as steel cable because it's a lot of it is the weight of the material. Force equals mass times acceleration, right? So exactly. Yeah. You nailed it right there. Exactly. So that it's like the other thing is with steel cable, we'll have like it's a bunch of smaller wire fibers that are spun around itself, right? So it will unspool, and because it's rounded like that, when it releases, it spins and it gets wild and out of control. Where synthetic winch line, when it breaks, it will really like a good example is, let's say you have a bow and arrow, right? Okay. And you pull the arrow back on the bow, and then you put like a damper or like a blanket over top that arrow. Well, now you think, oh, well, I'm safe because I've got my damper on the line. Well, if that line shears and breaks, the arrow would just go right through the blanket because the rope wants to, it follows the path of load. And so it won't fall to the ground. It just travels backwards in the path of wherever the load is coming from. Yeah. And it's pretty amazing to see. Yeah. And I know that that's one of the other things that steel does is as it breaks, it's not as malleable as a synthetic line, Dyneema or Spectra, whatever you're using. And so because it's a lot more of a rigid line, it doesn't come straight back. It will arc out away from the breaking point as it works its way backwards with the load. And so you also have to keep a lot more space clear of that line in order to stay safe when using it. 1,000%. Absolutely. Yes, sir. There's, obviously there's different scenarios somebody could get themselves into when off-roading, from being high-centered or turtled to stuck in a mud hole, stuck in snow, needing to use mechanical advantage. What are, some of the scenarios that might happen to somebody while they're off-roading that you could use some of Factor55's products to get you out safely and get you back home without dying? Yeah, so there's a lot there, right? So I think anybody in general always asks me like, what do I need to start with, right? I'm brand new to this, or I'm willing to upgrade my equipment, and what's the thing that needs to start here? Yeah. And so kind kind of the long and short of it, it was a few years ago. My son was actually coming to Idaho to visit, and at the time, I have a 2-door JK that stretched on 37s and the whole thing, and I've got a diesel Gladiator that we just got last year as well. And with my 2-door, that was my only vehicle, daily driver, my wheeler, my whole thing, and I love that Jeep. But when my son came to visit, we were going to go snowboarding, up in Tamarack, and then take him over to Gold Fork Hot Springs to have a nice little Idaho winter day. You know what I mean? Something totally fun and rad. Well, I can't, with my wife and then also with my brother coming with us, I can't put 4 people and 4 snowboards in a 2-door JK. Like, it's not going to happen.
I mean, you could, but
really, yeah. It's 10 pounds of sugar in a 1 pound bag. You know what I mean? It's like that type of thing. So we went up there and we decided, okay, well, we're going to take my wife's Xterra. She has a Nissan Xterra. We're going to take her Xterra up there. That way we can load everything on the roof rack. Everybody's got a comfortable place to sit. We got places to put all of our boots and the gear and all the stuff in the back of her truck, and drove up there. Well, once we got done on the mountain, we ended up driving down this little road that goes to Gold Fork Hot Springs. And Idaho is still really rural in a lot of these places. But as soon as you leave Boise, which is the capital of the state, the major city where we're from, like we have Highway 55, which runs up through that corridor that, starts the lifeline of the highway system through the state of Idaho. And also kind of like a throw at where the name of the company, Factor55, came from. So when you go up Highway 55, you roll up, just when you're south of McCall, and there's a turnoff to go to this place, to the Gold Fork Hot Springs. And that road is a dirt road. And that's how it is. You got the paved main 2-lane highway, and every offshoot off of that highway are dirt roads. And in the wintertime, it's like a foot deep. And like, you're lucky if they decide to plow that road or flatten the snow on that road. So there's constantly people that are sliding off and getting stuck all the time. Okay. So we turn down this road, and here's a kid in a Toyota, like a stock Toyota Tacoma, with his girlfriend, who nosed in, slid off the side of the road, and boom, he was like up against this fence and off into the shoulder. Okay. And now here I am, knee deep in snow, airing the kid's tires down, which freaked him out. And then, you know what I mean? And like rocking his truck back and forth with my son and his brother, trying to pop this guy up out of the snow. And then it dawned on me, like, if I would have had my Jeep, I would have had the winch. This would have been 5 minutes. I would have created social media content. It would have been a win-win all the way around, right?
Yeah.
And
do it for the gram, Justin.
Yeah, exactly. Well, dude, I was thinking like, this would have been like 2015, 2016, dawned on me that we needed to create something that was going to be like the go bag. What is going to be hey, this is the essential equipment that you need to keep in your vehicle. And then that's where really that high-end line of recovery kits and the thought of that was born. Because here I was in my wife's Xterra thinking like, if she would have just had a kinetic rope, she would have just had a toe strap, she would have just had a couple of soft shackles or a couple of hard shackles, we would have been able to assist this kid instantly, and we would have no problem in getting him extracted. And instantly I came back from that whole experience and was like, well, this is what we have to do. We have to put together these bundles of equipment and provide that info for the people that need to use it. So that's where now we have an entire line of full USA made recovery kits where every component, including the bag itself, is an American made product. And they're basic, and we named them after the mountain ranges and different places that we wheeling here in Idaho. And so the Owyhee kit, for instance, is the minimal amount of stuff. It's a bag, 30-foot by 2-ply toe strap, a soft shackle, a hard shackle, and one of our hitch receiver shackle mounts. And it's the basic minimum amount of stuff that anybody should be using, that if you're taking your vehicle and it's leaving pavement, this is the stuff, this is the minimum stuff that you need to have in your vehicle.
You have a variety of those kits as well, and for many different levels of how many items people are looking to get. I also want to give you kind of a shout out because I also have Adventure Tool Company bags, and you guys ended up working with them. If I am correct, that those are the bags you guys use, and their bags are phenomenal as well. So not only supporting another American company with the bags, but the quality of the bags are outstanding.
Yeah. So look, we machine parts, right? So we don't cut and sew things. And so why reinvent the wheel, right? So we kind of redesigned one of their medium bags where we made it a little bit bigger, a little wider to better fit like our equipment. And then it also has a couple added features with some MOLLE paneling on the tops of the bags and that kind of thing. We had ATC cut and sew those bags for us because it's a quality product and it's a lifelong purchase, right? We've had so many people buy the bags just because they want to use it as luggage, right? Because they're so nice. Yeah. So I mean, there's something to be said about the cool look of what that is, and it's been a phenomenal relationship and a phenomenal product to have to be able to put that together in those kits. And then we have basically the three major types for four-wheel drive vehicles is our Owyhee, our Sawtooth, and our Bora. The Owyhee is basically the minimum amount of stuff that you would need in a vehicle for vehicle to vehicle assisted recovery. The Sawtooth kit is pretty much anybody that's winching or has a winch on their vehicle and is looking for winching scenarios and vehicle assisted recovery scenarios. The Sawtooth kit is pretty much the bread and butter as far as equipment and size. And then the Bora kit's the full meal deal where it comes for vehicle winching scenarios and advanced rigging and towing scenarios. And that's what that kit comes with: the kinetic rope, our load distribution plate, all of our shorty straps, and it comes with everything. And so also this kind of by default worked out for us with the military because, we used to have guys be like, well, I need 10 of these and 2 of those and whatever. And now we can just be like, here's 25 bags, right? We don't have to deal with, we don't have to, it just made it easier. So The cool thing is with those recovery kits, every component is available individually, or you can save and buy them as bundle packages. So you get the best of both worlds there.
Nice. Yeah, we're actually, as you're talking about the kits, we have them pulled up here and we're looking at them and looking through them. There's a lot of really cool stuff in these kits. From the soft shackles, you got the longer soft shackles that are the extreme duty ones. You've got the short one, the extreme duty. You have what I like to call the donut, which is the soft shackle pulley. Yeah. You've got the load distribution plate, like you said. You've got kinetic straps. You've got the regular straps. You've got tree straps. I mean, there's a lot of shit in here that's really freaking awesome.
Oh yeah, man! And there's so many uses of this, and I think that there's a look, man, we're based in Boise, Idaho. There's 10 of us in this whole company, right? And so we were like, oh man, there must be all kinds of people and all this thing. I'm like, no, dude. You want to talk about customer service? You want to talk about inside, outside sales? You want to talk about events and marketing? It's us. Yeah. It's just the handful of people that work there that we are, busting our butts every day, staying through this. So now when you get into that grind of that, now with the level of social media and all the things that we're doing, I think the one thing that we missed out on is really staying on top of content creation when it came to our how-tos or all those types of things. Mm-hmm. And now we're finally just now developing what that content's going to look like. And there is still a ton of info that's going to be coming from our brand.
That's cool.
There's so much. It's crazy. There's so much stuff to come.
Yeah, that's LDP, really cool.
Just in itself, the uses that you can get out of that thing would blow your mind. It's crazy.
Yeah. When I first saw that, you showed it to me while I was talking to you at Hammers this year, and immediately my head kind of exploded. I was like, that is such a phenomenal product that can, there's a lot of recovery situations that we can do in off-roading that are very simple, straight on pulls with just a strap right between two vehicles. But if you really get your shit wadded up in the middle of the box at Winchell 3 on Fordyce, or something where you're just turned completely sideways and rolled over in Hell's Gate or something, or up on the escalator, like that LDP, there's a lot of super useful scenarios where a lot of scenarios where that can make life a hell of a lot easier when life could be extremely difficult. And you're like, it's going to take us 10 hours to get this freaking rig out of here unless we call in a Chinook or something. Like that was one product that I was pretty impressed with.
Yeah, so one for good examples, when we were snow wheeling, this last winter, and we came up around this 90-degree switchback. Well, everybody's got beadlocks, we're aired down to nothing, right? You're floating on top of the snow, doing the whole typical thing. But here's a guy in an F-150 that slid off the side of the road just trying to get up this kind of thing. rigging in the backcountry, like maybe trying to split board, like whatever he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
We got stuck on the side of this hill. So we wheel up around him. So I had to turn around. I ran my winch line out to a tree that's why the LDP around a tree. I had a pulley using my winch line to redirect to go down to him to a second pulley that was on his truck coming back up to the load distribution plate.
Yeah.
So now I have a 2-to-1 mechanical advantage on the truck, the redirection of the pulley from my winch line, and all the load is now going around the tree and pulling him up the hill instead of me to him.
Yeah.
And so my load is completely distributed through using that tool.
Yeah.
So there's so many functional ways that you can get around using these products, and that we need to just better show people like what those uses are. That would really help to facilitate, safer methods and making it cool and fun, right? For infotain people.
Yeah.
Say, hey man, it's really cool to know how to use your tools and the way that you can apply them while you're in the backcountry.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely something we need more of, especially with how prevalent Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all these visual displays of how product can work and be able to infotain people. I think that we need more of that in the recovery world for off-roaders. I think that there's a lot of stuff that goes on in recovery that people don't understand the physics behind a lot of, and they don't understand how to do it safely.
Totally.
And that's really exciting to hear that you guys are going to start focusing a lot more on some of that content creation, the educational infotainment side of things. That's going to be really cool. For upcoming products, do you guys have any? Yeah, go ahead.
The Overlander, the guy that's got an F-150 full-size Overland truck, and he's putting a roof rack on it and a tent and 20 gallons of water and blah, blah, blah. And the thing weighs 12,000 pounds. That guy's experience is going to be different than the rock crawler and what he's doing,
totally.
or than the Ultra 4 racer and how the racing scenario setups can be applied. So for us to be able to convey that message, it also dictates the type of wheeling you're doing. Should also give you the knowledge of what equipment you want to carry with you and how to use that equipment that you do have.
For sure, 100%. And it seems like there's a lot of different styles of off-roading too. I mean, we love talking about kind of getting into the weeds about the differences between, rock bouncing, Baja, Ultra 4, rock crawling, mudding. I mean, there's so many different aspects of off-roading, and yeah, what equipment you bring on your trip for one style may not be what you're going to bring on your trip for another style kind of thing. So
100%.
Yeah, dude, that's cool.
Can you give us another life lesson on or when you should use which strap, kinetic or static?
Oh, 1,000%. So here's the deal, man. Like, because of every bozo on YouTube and every person in here's the other thing. Chinese equipment companies or companies, first and foremost, it is of my opinion that if you have USA or America in the name of your brand, you better make stuff here, or else you are living in nothing but hypocrisy, right? To begin with. And most of these companies that are claiming to be recovery gear companies do not actually manufacture anything. They're literally marketing companies and not actually physically making any product. So that first and foremost is like the most insane thing to me ever, because people just want to be frugal. I get it. But where do you want to put your dollars, right? And you want to put your dollars in something that's going to save your kids or save your wife or your friends or your vehicle, right? For vehicle sympathy in order to get your vehicle off the trail safely. So let me just get that out of the way. The second thing is that when it comes to using either kinetic energy or static toe straps, there's two different scenarios where that applies to. Kinetic energy is only meant to be used for compression terrain, for sand, snow, and mud. It's not to be used for towing. It's not to be used for the rocks. The reason being is because kinetic energy ropes are made out of nylon. Nylon stretches and rebounds. The problem with kinetic energy, utilizing it in rocks, is when you start to pull a vehicle with a kinetic rope in the rocks, the line stretches and it releases, allowing that vehicle to be moved forward. But what if you pull that thing forward too much and you just slam the diff right into the rock in front of it? And now you got a broken diff housing, gear oil all over the trail. Now you just made your life even worse because you were worried about the little jolt or jerk you may feel in the vehicle by using a tow strap, right? A kinetic rope is not supposed to be used for towing. The reason being is when you use it for towing, what happens is when you stretch and release and stretch and release and stretch and release, you can literally pull the elasticity out of the rope. So one of the kind of rules of thumb from like we've heard from a lot of the guys in Australia and just general uses is like if you use that rope to a maximum pull, like dead weight hard pull, more than two to 4 times in a day, you should allow that at least 24 to 48 hours to rest to allow the fibers to settle back again so you can maintain the elasticity in that rope. But if I tow you out from a trail and we're going 5 miles down a dirt trail, I'm going to pull the elasticity out of that rope.
Interesting.
That's what it's going to happen. But look at it. If that's the only tool you have, it doesn't mean you can't use it because clearly it will work. What it means is we have to have the conversation that says, yeah, man, I can get you out of here, but you're going to owe me $180 for a new rope. Right?
Because you need that's the repeatability of it working over and over again. That's what the factor of it comes into. Got it.
Exactly. Whereas with a static tow strap, right? It's high dense polyester. There's minimal to no stretch with that material. So that allows the material to last much longer because you would see the strap starting to fail or come apart or that kind of thing when you knew that it was time or fraying or whatever, that you would know it was time to replace that later on in the future. So if you start yanking the elasticity out of that line, you won't know until that thing lets go. And kinetic energy can be very effective, but it's also the most dangerous form of recovery because it's explosive and it's unpredictable. And that's why, like every scenario that we get into, that's why we always go to winching. It's static, it's controlled. But most times the reason why people don't do it is because it takes time and people in general are lazy. That's it. That's it. That's all there is to it, man.
There's so many times when like I'll come up on a recovery scene or people trying to get themselves out of a situation like, God, when was it? 2-3 weeks ago when we did the glue tread trip on the Rubicon, there was a group of guys in Little Sluice and they took 2 hours to get 2 vehicles through Little Sluice and they refused to winch. And I was just like, we would have been done an hour and a half ago if you guys had just winched rather than trying to futz around with all this other stuff. And
my God. Yes, dude. Yeah.
And they didn't want to winch because they were like, it's going to take too long to set up the rigging, set up the winch and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh, you guys are killing me right now.
Yeah. Longer than the 2 hours we just sat here.
Right.
You guys jerked around trying to get yourself up this thing.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately is the biggest problem in our industry. And when it comes to vehicle recovery and using these types of products is, it's this demonizing of using the equipment. It's the winching is for pussies.
Yeah.
You didn't wheel the trail. Oh, you pulled cable, like whatever. The point being is like, where does it end? Right. Where does it end? Because it's like, well, if you're using your winch, you didn't really wheel the trail. Well, if you used your lockers, you couldn't do it in 2-wheel drive. You know
I guess that is a fair point if you start talking about extremes there on that. Yeah.
I'm just saying, they're like, oh, well, I wheeled the whole trail and didn't winch. Okay, great. Well, what if I took your lockers away? What if I took away your 40s and made you do it on 31s? Like, I mean, it's just so stupid. Like, why put $1,000 or more or less in some horrible circumstances tool on the front of your vehicle and be embarrassed to use it? It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense to me because if you're putting it there, it's a tool to do the job. So if I've got lockers, let's say I got a rear locker, but no locker in the front, at least that's one added tool that I got in the rear. But thank God I got the one in the front because I'm going to push my button and engage that thing and get up something, right? So what's the difference of pulling the winch line out and hitting the on button of the winch to use the tool for the scenario? Like if we're going across the Serengeti, dude, on like an expedition and we have to get up these giant waterfalls, I'm not going to be thinking about getting up the obstacle. I'm thinking about getting to the end. It's about getting to the destination, man, the journey and the trip to do that. And, now just like what we were just at Windrock, this over the last couple of weeks. Now, let me ask you, you guys ever been to Windrock?
I have not.
Been there before?
Never.
So it's gnarly. And when I mean gnarly, like it is so much worse than anything that I've ever done on the West Coast. Not only are you dealing with the humidity and the heat, but you're also in like the woods with a lot of bugs and it's slick clay mud on top of being piled in there with rocks. The wheeling's hard. And a lot of it, you got to really carry momentum to get through a lot of those obstacles.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And it gets scary because momentum, right, leads to broken parts. You know what I mean? So there was a ton of winching and a ton of stuff that goes on with these trail rides. And when I think about like that kind of thing, there's just certain things the vehicles won't do unless you utilize the tools that you have available. And so by having that vehicle and having that winch, it's a tool that you should know how to use. It's like the same thing with knowing the difference between being in 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive, or when to use your lockers and when to use a front locker versus a rear locker or whatever. And so I think us as a company, right, needs to do a better job of also explaining its uses and times when to do it. And that's why I always roll by the rule, the three strikes you're out.
Yeah.
Because here we are, you got 20 people on the trail. You get 3 times at the obstacle, man. If you don't make it, you live to see another day. You can come back and do it at another time, but we're just wasting time here. You know what I mean? It's time to move on and get through the whole thing. And if you're using the winch, it's actually pretty rad to see how effective that little tool can make your life. And you got the easy way out, because I'll tell you, man, I've left my Jeep camping in a lot of places that I was not with it because I decided to be a cool guy and blow up my ring and pin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
no, that's a really good point. Because if you think about it, think to like Ultra 4 and running King of the Hammers. You don't hear people finishing the race saying, "Oh, you didn't really fucking win because you used your winch up sledgehammer or something." Like,
yeah, I mean, well, yeah,
or King's Graveyard or whatever it is. They're using that winch as a tool to get through the trail, and that's what you do. And it's just another tool in your toolkit, and it's nothing more than that. I think that's a really good point that more people need to consider.
Yeah, I mean, like Randy, even when Randy Clausen won KOH the last time, he winched 5 times that day.
Yeah.
There used to be this deal with KOH that, like the joke was always like, well, if you're winching, you're not winning. And now the flip side of that is it's gotten to be so hard where even in that particular race that you're planning the winch points because you got to save the car to finish the race.
Yeah.
Right. So 3 tries you're out, because I would rather pull you up the obstacle, know that you're using your equipment in a safest and right manner. And then also, so we're not underneath of it, trying to putting the axle shaft in on the side of a mountain if we don't have to.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I agree. Real quick, let's talk a little bit about snatch blocks, because I know that snatch blocks are an item in off-road recovery that are not used very often, but when they are used, people seem to have a lot of questions about them and how they work and how do you use them for misdirects versus a mechanical advantage. And, what's the difference between your typical snatch block that you might see that might slide open? It's all hard steel. You slide your line into it and then hook it up to your anchor point versus what you guys have kind of come up with in what I like to call the donut. What are the differences there in the snatch blocks, and what are some things that you should watch out for when looking at snatch blocks versus soft shackle pulleys and using them?
Yeah, so I think in general, most people should use snatch blocks more often than they do right now, even when it comes to something that you would think of even as a single line pull. And again, I think most people don't, just out of pure laziness, right? It goes even back to that, because dude, you got to put your winch in a free spool. You got to walk the line all the way out there. And then you got to have enough line to come all the way back to your vehicle.
Yep.
And then you got to open the swing plate, put that in there and rig up the shackle and come back to your bumper and put it in engage the winch and then start. It's just a process.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that especially with like the new, friction rings and those types of pulleys, think that the use of those, because they're lighter weight material, and the fact that once you attach the soft shackle to whatever strap it is, wherever the pulley is going to be mounted to, you can literally feed all your rigging right through there without having to open the plates up or take out the soft shackle or hard shackle or whatever and de-rig that scenario. And it saves you a lot of time. It saves you a bunch of time when you're going through that scenario, right? So we're just gotten to the point to where we are, I think that allows this tool to be used more often. And if it can be more convenient, then you're more likely to do it. So let me give you this scenario. We're gonna talk about this in the most simple, basic terms. So I'm not gonna talk about the amount of layers of rope on the drum. I'm not gonna, we're not gonna get in the minutia of all the things. So we're gonna try to keep this as simple as possible because this is much easier to convey on a whiteboard or in person, right? Than it is to be talking about it. So I'm gonna try to keep this as simple as possible.
Yeah, that's my biggest issue with running the podcast is trying to explain to people what mechanical poles are versus Mr. X, because I think there's a lot of people that are like, you have a snatch block out, it's automatically mechanical advantage. It's like, no, not quite. But then I don't know how to explain it without drawing it out and showing people. So I was hoping you had a more magical way with words than I do.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to keep that. I'll try to keep this together as much as I can and not get lost myself without just talking about it. So basically, what happens is that you're not doubling the power of the winch at all, right? We are not. What happens is that you have a 10,000 pound winch on the front of the vehicle. The line that runs out to the pulley and comes around that pulley and comes back to your vehicle. That the line leaving the winch sees 10,000 pounds. The line coming back to your vehicle sees 10,000 pounds, which means that force is combining at the apex of the bend inside of that pulley, and the pulley is seeing the 20,000 pounds. Gotcha. So the rope on the drum that's out in that rigging in a pulley rigged scenario can only see the amount of force that the winch can pull. So it doesn't matter whether you've got 2 pulleys or 3 pulleys out. The rope can only see the force that's being applied to the rope.
Okay.
Meaning that if you have a pulley going to a tree, a pulley coming back to your vehicle, and then the rope leading the vehicle, well, how many lines do you have out, right? From the winch to the pulley, from the pulley back to another pulley going and anchored to a tree. So you got 10,000 pound winch. It's 1, 2, 3. You're providing that. You would say, okay, well, that's 30,000 pounds. Well, it's not 30,000 pounds. It's 20 at the tree. It's 20 at the vehicle and 10,000 pounds at the other tree. You're actually trying to really apply. So like there's an advanced rigging technique that's called a Spanish Burton. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not heard of that one.
The Spanish Burton basically is you run your winch line out to a pulley and back to your vehicle. Okay. So now that's 2-to-1 mechanical advantage.
Okay.
Then what you do is you take a winch line extension from your vehicle out to another pulley and you bring that winch line extension back to the first pulley. So you have 2 pulleys in line. So the first pulley comes out from your winch to the pulley to your vehicle. And then you have a winch line extension that comes from your vehicle out to a pulley and then to the first pulley.
Okay.
So if you have a 10,000 pound winch, you're creating 10,000 and 10,000 pounds, 20,000 at the pulley. If you have that winch line extension going out to the pulley and back to the first pulley, now if you're seeing 20,000 pounds at that first pulley, that means the line leaving attached to that pulley, seeing 20,000 going through a pulley, 20,000. That means you're seeing 40,000 at that second pulley. So you're getting a 4-to-1 mechanical advantage with 2 pulleys.
Yeah.
So utilizing that technique, you can actually use a small, like a UTV or an ATV and extract a diesel truck out of the mud if you have enough of rigging put together to do that. Yeah. So that's one scenario, right, for mechanical advantage.
Okay.
Now, the differences between a regular snatch block and our soft shackle pulleys, okay, is that not every snatch block is created equal. Not every friction ring is created equal. So we live in a friction-filled environment.
Yes.
Right? 2-to-1 is not really a true 2-to-1. You're not taking your 10,000 pound winch and creating 20,000 pounds of pull. It's not how it works. So really, and that's if you have a perfect pulley, an oil impregnated bearing, all these things to go into place. Most pulleys don't have those things in them anyway. And so more likely than what you're getting is that you're getting a rod that's got a greaser fitting on a Delrin wheel or a steel wheel pulling between those metal cheek plates. Well, when that happens, you're really only seeing about 1.9, 1.95 to 1. Not exactly 2-to-1. Okay. So if you're not even truly getting a 2-to-1 mechanical advantage, the difference between using a regular snatch block versus a friction ring, you're only giving up anywhere from about 5 to 8% of the overall pull by utilizing a friction ring, because the friction ring is sliding on the ultra high molecular weight polyethylene of the rope fibers of the soft shackle, which are self-lubricating. So the soft shackle is acting as the bearing in the pulley.
Yeah.
And so as the line passes through there, it's meant to be slippery to slide over top there. Billet aluminum is already a heat sink as it is. And then when it's like mil-spec hard anodized, like the way we treat our pulleys, it even makes the pulley surface even slicker. And then we even took it one step further to Teflon impregnate that center surface to make it even slicker. But that's the same reason why our fair leads are mil-spec hard anodized and out of that billet aluminum, because it's dissipating the heat and the friction from the line passing over top of it. So as that pulley rotates on the self-lubricating fibers of those soft shackles, you're only giving up about 5 to 8% of efficiency compared to the traditional snatch block. So the way it works is essentially to keep the numbers round, that if you're trying to say, I got a 10,000 pound winch, I want to get 20,000 pounds of pull, then you're going to go to a 2-to-1 mechanical advantage. Well, if you're only going to gain, let's say instead of getting 20,000, you get 16 or 18,000 pounds or 19,000 pounds of force out of it, is it really going to make a difference? Right?
Yeah.
Is it really that big of a deal? You know what I mean? And so many people, I think, get lost in the data and the individual numbers to try to pinpoint it, when really at the end of the day, what works is what counts. And is it going to work? Hell yeah. Is it going to be a lot more convenient? Shit, yes, it is. So why not use it? Right?
Yeah.
So that's where the main difference between a traditional snatch block and a pulley block really comes into play. And there's a great video. We haven't even really had the time or anything to share it or do that, but there's some industrial engineers that work at a tire manufacturing plant in Nebraska that actually did an entire pulley test with our RRP in comparison to regular snatch blocks with load cells and temperature gauges and all. I mean, it's brilliant, dude. But it's like a 30-minute video. So if you want to go down the rabbit hole and look at some hard data, I would go check this video out. You can just type in, Factor55 rope retention pulley, and it will be in the list of the videos that pop up on YouTube. But it's phenomenal, the data that these guys produced based off of that. And so, again, we never really gotten the full scale production of being able to be in front of it because, dude, we just haven't had the time. This has been something that we are going to address because we have a new version of the pulley that will be released sometime soon as well. So we really need to get back on top of this to provide this data and really try to help people better understand what that is for mechanical advantages and uses of the parts. And the same kind of thing where, like, if you get above 90 degrees in a pulley system, you're no longer gaining that mechanical advantage, right? You're only using that pulley as a redirection. It's not, you know what I'm saying? It's not, You're not seeing that force load because it's got to be attached to or close to a starting point where the load is coming from to actually gain mechanical advantage from the pull. And if you want to really see that, one of the best resources for that information right now on the internet is from an Australian automotive journalist and four-wheel drive trainer. His name is Robert Pepper. He has done a brilliant job of explaining pulleys and pulley advantages and systems on his YouTube channel. So it's a great reference point. And we will be working with him and Bob Wallers from the Off-Road Safety Academy, some of our I4WDTA trainers, and a lot more cultivating of this really good real world content. Because, dude, what an Ultra 4 racer needs to know in order how to do winching safe and fast is way different than what the Jeeper needs to know when they're stuck in the mud or when they're trying to recover another vehicle. And the other thing always goes into, like, look, man, in any kind of recovery scenario, you got to think about the 80-20 rule. And 80% of the time, you're going to use this stuff to save somebody else and not yourself. And so if that's the case, you want to have the highest quality equipment you can to be the hero in that scenario. Because I got to tell you, dude, for me personally, being a Jeeper, I've pulled out more Nissan sedans and Subaru Outbacks in places that they don't belong than anything else. Because recovering Jeeps is easy, right? Your single line pulls, your trail wheeling, blah, blah, blah. That's a simple process. When you start getting into some really complicated things, when you have to change the angles and make this leverage, just like that scenario I talked about with that guy, with that truck on the side of the mountain in the snow, right? You got to really think your way through that scenario in order to get the best possible outcome, and to do it only once. Now, the other thing with pulleys I'd like to say too is that when you run that pulley out, you're also halving the line speed. You're cutting the line speed in half. So what ends up happening is you're getting a higher pull strength, and your winch is working less. It's using less amp draw in order to produce more pull. And so you're saving your equipment, you're saving your line, you're getting a harder pull, and it's even creating to do it slower. Right. So now it's even more controlled.
More controlled environment.
Exactly. So why would you not do that? Well, the reason, you're lazy. That's it. That's all there is. That's it. So you got to not be lazy, man. It's really what it comes down to. Right.
Yeah.
And so by utilizing these things now, we're like our rope retention pulley. We've been working with a company out of Seattle, Washington called InnovaC. And so these guys are now actually using those pulleys underwater.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
A diver can go down with 10 of them on his arm each one of them only weighs 8 ounces.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it almost displaces in salt water. So the difference of our pulley versus other people's is that we're the only ones. All of this stuff, just like soft shackles, just like synthetic rigging, has been adapted from the marine industry into off-road. So one of the things that we did is we're the only company that designed that pulley that was specifically made for off-road use. Yeah. Where the inner radius of the pulley is slightly larger. And also the patented feature is that there's the little silicone fingers that are in the pulley that retain the rope when the rope goes to slack. Because again, when we're winching, we're dealing with tension and slack and tension and slack. Those roper fingers those will keep the winch line inside of the pulley so it doesn't jump the sheave if slack goes in the line.
Yeah.
Yep. That's cool. Earlier in our conversation, much earlier, you were talking about how the Pro Link and probably the Flat Link are roughly 2x working load or 2 to 3x working load than some of the other items that are 5x. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
So when you do a mechanical advantage, should you be concerned about the working load of a Pro Link or Flat Link when you're putting additional or multiple stresses onto those items?
Oh man, you guys are smart. That's a great question. So again, the thing about what I just said, where you have a winch, 10,000 pound winch, the line can only see what the winch can pull. So if you got a 10,000 pound winch, 10,000 pounds is the most that line can see. Whether it runs through one pulley or 10 pulleys, it's still 10,000 pounds. So if that Pro Link is at the end of that line, it can only see 10,000 pounds. You see what I'm getting at?
Yes.
And the rope, breaks between 18 and 22,000 pounds. So still, the Pro Link is still the strongest thing in the system. What you need to be worried about is then how the pulleys are in line and what's the maximum load that's going to be put on this. Now, I'll give you an example. So if I got a 10,000 pound winch and I'm going to do the Spanish Burton like I talked about, right? So if I run the first line out, the first pulley system out, and I have a soft shackle that breaks at 39,000 pounds, well, I know that my line, my 10,000 pound winch in a double pull capacity can only see 20,000 right there. Well, if my soft shackle breaks at 39, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
But from that winch line extension to that second pulley coming back to there, now that's seeing 20,000 pounds. It's 20,000 per leg. So that means it's 40,000 at that additional pulley, at that second pulley. So that soft shackle needs to have a higher braking strength. It needs to have a higher working load limit. Because if I'm going to potentially create 40,000 pounds of pull with a 10,000 pound winch, and that soft shackle breaks at 39,000, it's no longer good to go there, right?
Gotcha.
You got to have, and this entire industry functions purely off the braking strength. Nobody ever thinks about the scenario of the actual working load limit. It's a downside to the technicality of what we are doing, but the point is that it's kind of good enough, right? Yeah. I mean, I think that ultimately that's the thing to be said. It's only when you start getting into these advanced scenarios or doing really gnarly things with heavier loads or getting into industrial rigging applications for tow trucks and the military, that kind of thing, does it really matter to focus on larger diameter items? Because it's just some stuff just simply is not. How do I say this? Some stuff is simply good enough.
Yeah.
Right. To be used in this scenario.
Well, yeah, we're not pulling out 50,000 pound tanks. We're pulling out 5 to 10,000 pound vehicles that are, usually there might be something a little bit hung up, but it's not. Usually, once you get that hang up done, you should be, for the most part, done with the majority of the forces you're going to be putting on the system. If you're setting up your rigging and preparing your area properly. Yeah, no, that's a good point where, to keep in mind for people. Yeah, it could always be stronger, but what are you sacrificing by getting the more strength? Are you or maybe sacrificing the convenience and now it's a pain in the ass to set up your rigging anymore, so you don't do it?
Yeah, and again, is it bulky, right? You're taking up more room. So like I have a lot of guys that are always like, oh man, well, I need 1.5 inch kinetic rope. Like, dude, where are you going to put the damn thing? Like, are you kidding me? Like, they're so, it gets so big around, you almost need like a trash can to carry the thing around with you. So a lot of guys get caught up in the idea of like, oh, well, what are the uses? What are the things that you can get away with doing when you're trying to expel that type of, that and gain that momentum and that kinetic energy advantages with certain vehicles. So I think that one of the biggest things to reference for anybody listening to is that's why we released and co-authored 2 recovery manuals with Bob Wallers of the Off-Road Safety Academy.
Oh, nice.
We do have our basic guide to winching. And then we also have our basic guide to kinetic energy and towing a disabled vehicle off-road. Both of those manuals come in the recovery kits and are also available on our website individually. We will have digital versions of those available where you'll be able to have them on your phone and that type of thing here in the future, especially as we start to cultivate and create more of this content. And we'll finally have this stuff being able to, finally have the time to focus and use that kind of stuff out there. In the backs of both of those manuals is the STAPA Stuck Assessment Checklist. So it stands for Stop, Think, Observe, Plan, and Act.
Okay. And
in the STAPA checklist, it will go through start to finish what you should do in that scenario. And I'll tell you what, man, like most times a stuck vehicle in a general sense, if you air the tires down and make sure the thing's in 4 low, you can just drive it out of the scenario. I can't tell you how many times we get calls from Hawaii County Sheriff's Department or the Forest Service or BLM. Be like, hey, can you help us? A tow truck won't come out here. And be like, yo, man, like, are the tires aired down? And is it in 4 low? Because I'm not driving an hour. They just come drive it out. And that's just ridiculous. So a lot of times I think that part of it comes in a driver's skill. Most people don't take the method that, the vehicles are so much more capable than the drivers are these days.
Yeah, they are.
So the vehicles can tend to get you in a way worse place than you know how to get yourself out of, for starters. And that little guide in the back of those booklets will really help you to where, like, look, man, even with a set of traction boards and airing the tires down a little bit more, you could get out of a lot of scenarios before you ever even need to start winching. You know what I mean? So that Stuck Assessment Checklist is a really good reference tool to be in there. And then additionally, in each of those guides, it will show you rigging scenarios of how to use your equipment, and also even a chart to size the kinetic rope per the weight of your gross vehicle for your vehicle. So there's a lot of really good reference that you can go from, especially for those of you that may still feel like a beginner, or even if you're really experienced, could give you good knowledge base for training. And now both of those manuals are being used by LA County Fire, Nevada Highway Patrol. They're now instituted as training directives for some of our tactical mobility training, for special forces, for SOCOM, Dev Group guys. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Like this is real stuff, right? It's real facts and information and data that you can choose to do what you can, And like I said, man, like we can all bend the rules a little bit, but there are some hard facts here that were really like, these are the things that will help you make your life a ton easier, and practice, right? You got to practice.
Well, that's the other benefit is if you are practicing and kind of the basics and essentially the physics behind stuff and how to calculate your load ratings and figure out what your load is going to be on a system. you can take that and then use what resources you have available to get the job done. So by knowing a little bit of the basics in recovery, you can start applying it to a lot of the advanced stuff, but you need to know where to start to begin with.
Yeah. So, and a great example is like, look, if me and you are wheeling together, right? And Bob told me this years ago, and I love this. Again, Bob Waller's from Off-Road Safety Pen.
Mm-hmm.
He told me this years ago, and I've always loved this, that it's in a rule of threes, similar to scuba. So in scuba, we have a rule of threes. When you plan the dive and you dive the plan. And in the rule of threes, we go in with a third of the air in the tank. We come out with a third of the air in the tank. We have a third of the air in the tank as reserve, right? So we do the rule of threes. And with off-roading, it's, are you remote, solo, and international? Because if me and you can be remote, or all three of us, we can go wheeling remote. And if you got a winch and I don't, who cares, right? We can get a lot done, right? So being remote is one scenario. If you're remote and solo, now the narrative's way different.
Yeah.
How much fluids do you have? Spare parts, food, water, communication devices. And if you're remote, solo, and international, you're in Baja, you're in Canada, you're in the Sahara, or somewhere across the Serengeti. Like, do you have a sat phone? What other types of what other types of mapping programs are you using? Right. So you got to build those scenarios for wherever it is that you're going to apply your vehicle adventuring and traveling. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that really is a big thing that a lot of people need to better focus on. And to that point, it's also the use of that equipment in a practice. Whereas, like, if I come across a Tacoma that's on 33s, that's got a rooftop tent and got a truck bed full of crap, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I don't know much about the Tacoma, but I know that the gross vehicle weight is probably around 5,000 or 6,000 pounds. I'm going to look at how much water he's got on board or other types of gear, how many people are in the vehicle, and start to average out and go, okay, well, instantly I know this guy's 8,000 pounds gross vehicle weight. Okay, I'm just going to throw that out there as a number. In the back of that stuck assessment checklist, you'll find that if a vehicle only is stuck with a quarter of the tire buried in compression terrain, like sandstorm or mud, that vehicle is now seeing an additional 100% of its gross vehicle weight.
Really,
so
just a quarter.
8,000 pounds.
That's crazy.
Wow.
It's 16,000 pounds to get that out. If I got a 10,000 pound winch, I instantly am getting snatch blocks out.
Yeah.
Why would I even try a single line pull if I know that he's that stuck? It's time to pull out it's time to just get the guns out.
Wow.
So one of the things I always teach in a scenario too is when I go to do a winch line, I go and take all the rope off the drum. I get it all off. Because the last thing I want to do is walk up to the tree and be 5 feet short.
I have to walk over back.
Right.
Okay.
So I just get it all off the drum, man. Because you're going to have to re-spool it at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
No matter what. So start with getting it out the most that you can. So you know that you're going to be able to get to the person you're going to need to get to, or to know that you got enough distance to get a pulley line set up. Because again, if you're running a double line pull, you got 100 feet of rope on the drum, you got 50 feet, there's your 100.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if he's 80 feet away from you, now I got to get extensions out and straps, and you know what I mean? So you always kind of got to know before you go, right? And when you're standing there and going, okay, well, this is how far I can get to him to be safe. These are the things I need to do. Organize the stuff and then put it into play and execute it. And the more you do it, the more muscle memory is created, and the faster you'll get at doing it. And then everybody gets home safe.
Yeah. That's cool. I like it. That's some great advice from Mr. Justin.
Yeah.
Advice with Justin.
We're here to help, right? Well, that's what I'm saying is I just think that the more that you use this stuff, the more advantages I think that you find into that. It's cool. It's cool to know how to do this stuff. It's cool to know how to put this stuff into use. And there's no shaming in doing it. And I would much rather be the guy that winched up an obstacle than be the guy that's like, now I'm the trail plug. And I need somebody to go get parts just to get my vehicle off the trail, right?
Yep, that's bad news bears right there.
Yeah, man. And I just experienced it, man. It's a Windrock this last dude. We just did Smoky Mountain Jeep Invasion, right? And so we did a partnership with Tread Lightly. We're one company that partnered with Holly Fowler with Mischief Maker.
Yep.
They built a vehicle to give away to raffle off for Tread Lightly. Now the deal was they were building this. They're building this vehicle. It's a JL or what's left of one with a full cage. Tons, 42s, the whole thing. And they built this vehicle, and then they've been giving it to partner people to wheel it at events all year, and then they're going to give it away to Trail Hero. It's in a state of state of need of some love. Let's just say that.
Okay.
What did you do?
Well, let's just say that the rear track bar has left the track.
Oh,
you don't need track bars. You don't need to locate the axle under the vehicle.
Yeah. And then, so the rear track bar and the rear passenger coilover are no longer a part of that Jeep.
Trail Hero's not terribly far away, Justin.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all I'm saying is that I was specifically told to drive it like I don't own it, and I did. So I did my job. You know what I mean?
I think drive it like you don't own it, but don't drive it like you stole it.
Well, I have it on video. Where I said, I'm probably going to break this thing. And she said, that's okay. We'll fix it.
Okay. All right.
That's good. It's on video. I have it on video. So
that's great.
Look, man, like these guys, they're content creators. I just gave them content to create.
Look at you being so kind and thoughtful.
I'm so generous for that.
Oh, man.
Like, so look, just in that scenario right there, like I had a problem. This Jeep has gotten beaten around by a lot of people that don't wheel consistently. It's not my build, right? And blah, 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 blah. So who would have thought that the track bar bracket was going to shear off the frame of this vehicle? I didn't. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? So I didn't weld it on there. I didn't know, you know what I'm saying? So it's all those things. But now I'm in that scenario. But dude, I was literally in my own worst position where not my Jeep, not my tools, not my build. I literally had nothing. We had nothing. So we had one ratchet strap to put around the track bar and the end of that thing that was left in order to hold it onto the frame, right? I had to open up the bump stop to get it to go all the way down so that the bump stop was riding on the axle to try to keep the vehicle from grinding on the tire until we got to a point where we took one of the springs from the coilover, stuffed it up around that bump stop, and then ratchet strapped the bottom of that spring to the axle housing in order to basically create our own coil bucket to drive this thing off the trail. But that's part of the fun, right? We scenario where we get to talk through, this, and you get to learn from every experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. That's fun. We had a similar situation in Moab where I snapped the leaf springs off of my vehicle. They all left the building, all four of them. And it was a matter of how do you resuspend the vehicle and drive it out while keeping the axle located. And so it's fun stuff like that, where it's again kind of comes back to recovery too, in an essence, where you have a limited number of resources. What do you have in your pocket in order to use to get the job done? And the more stuff that you can use over and over again and know that they're going to be safe and that they're going to get you off the trail, they're going to get you back home without killing you, the better off you're going to be out on these trips, whether you're with a buddy, with a group, with a club, by yourself, or international. I think it's and that's what it's really comes down to. Is I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy about this industry and this hobby that we have is the MacGyverism. The using the resources according to what you need for kind of thing. And what do you have at your hand, and how are you going to use it?
Yeah, and look, I'm looking just even a couple weeks ago, right? I mean, there was right there. I think it was the first time in recent memory where we've had a situation where somebody's tragic accident was so publicly put out there.
Oh yeah,
just because just the way that the nature of our industry is and how we utilize social media and the internet these days. But a guy named Ryan Woods tragically died because they had a tow strap attached to a drop hitch receiver, and that drop hitch receiver sheared off, came through the windshield, ricocheted off the steering wheel, and hit him in the head. and killed him in front of his family in a truck while he was stuck in northern Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And since that accident, I was in contact with the fire chief that was on the location, the first on scene in that instance, with Ryan Woods' wife, Jennifer, and try to do whatever we can to support her and help she's using this as kind of and trying to be an advocate for people to try to do things safer rather than trying to do the dumb thing. Right?
Yeah, try to do the quick and easy thing, quote unquote.
And this again goes back to the same scenario of like, dude, if you don't know, wait to call a professional and don't try something that could end up, risking your life and have it be ended so tragically like that. And for something that was totally avoidable, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And could have been done in such a better way. And so there is ultimately, there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of things, right? In the infotainment that can be done with our industry. But at the end of the day here, man, it's still serious business and lives and equipment are at risk, no matter what, and no matter what happens, and especially now with JLs and Land Rovers, all these, $80,000 vehicles. It's a lot of money that's invested in there too. So that's the other thing. It's like, dude, if you're going to have a badass rig, save the money to put the parts and get the parts that are going to be, actual safety tools with reliability, validation through testing, lot traceability of materials, and hopefully USA made.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm a big fan of everything you've been talking about so far. I love all the tips. I love all the insight to Factor55 and kind of what you guys do, how what your quality control processes are and the standards that you're holding yourselves to. I think that's really cool. I think it speaks a lot about the pride that you guys have in the work that you do and the products that you build. And so, this has been cool. A really fun 2 hours to sit down here with you while you're driving across the country in a new Bronco jerk. And
that will be at the booth. It's going to be in the SEMA booth.
Oh, nice.
Come by and see it all built in SEMA.
Perfect.
Let me tell you, dude, a shady guy like me showing up to Ford Performance and getting keys to a free Bronco was pretty hilarious. It's pretty funny.
Nice, man. Yeah, cool. So is there any other events come?
I want to know, are you going home or are you going down to Mexico with that Bronco?
Yeah. Oh my God, man. If it was up to me, I'd be headed straight to Ensenada with this thing. It was up to me. I'm actually, so this build will be, for those who don't know, a lot of the major OEMs have backed out of going to SEMA this year. So Ford is not going to have a booth there this year. And what they did is they partnered with some of their, high-level partnered companies. Warren is an OEM supplier to Ford. So they gave us a Bronco that we were building for SEMA. Well, now because everybody's still playing catch up for the state of the world, there was like a 60-day lead time just to get a shipping company to deliver this Bronco to Clackamas so it could be built for the show. So now I am now in the Bronco driving it from Detroit to Portland, Oregon, so it can get built and then be in our booth at SEMA.
Just in shipping co.
29 Yeah, that's right. So I picked it up for 29 miles on it, and it's currently at 751. It's a fun journey, man. Yeah. Life's a journey, man. You just gotta go with it. I
like it. Well, I think that's a good way to kind of.
I prefer my Jeep, though. I'm just gonna say I prefer my Jeep.
Nice.
Just want to say nice. Hey, I'm sorry, all you Bronco fans. I like my Jeep, man. I gotta tell you.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I think that's a good way to kind of put it. Life is definitely a journey from starting out as a saxophone player in a ska band. That's pretty freaking cool. Pretty rad. To, driving a Bronco across the country to get it built for SEMA. I think that's a really fun journey. Some fun stories that we got to talk about today. Any last things that you want to leave people with, or how could people get a hold of you if they have other questions about anything?
So everybody can get a hold of us for further information at Factor55.com, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I think there's a new one called Vero. I don't know. You guys familiar with that? It's brand new.
Vero. Vero. Yep.
Vero. Yep. So we just signed up on that. Right. Facebook, all of it.
Nice.
They can find more information on all those things. There's going to be a ton of new product videos, demonstrations. We're going to be doing a ton of next year's Warren Industries 75th anniversary. So we're going to be doing a ton more wheeling events And I mean, it's going to be on and on and on and on and on. I mean, the amount of stuff that we have still yet to do and create. And, look, man, like, I just want people to have knowledge, to know, to be safer in the backcountry. I mean, really, at the end of the day, yeah, we're trying to provide the best products that we can absolutely do and manufacture and put out in the world. But, I think that education is our biggest asset off-road. And you need to educate yourself and educate those that you're around and the people that you deal with, and practice together and learn how to utilize your tools and who has what, in order to know that everybody can come home, man, because nobody should lose their life because of just something that we love to do.
Yeah. Agreed. I think that's huge. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on here. I know that you love the education part, and that's what we love doing too. So figured we can put our heads together and come up with a really cool episode for everybody. And I think we did.
Yeah. Awesome.
Any final words? What's a final words you want to leave everybody with?
I would say final thoughts. I hope to see you guys out on the trail, man. And I hope to go wheeling with more people from across, all the world, man. I love this industry. I love what I get to do, and feel very fortunate and blessed every single day that I get to share something that I'm so passionate about with so many other people. And so again, I can't thank you guys enough for having me on here. And I look forward to being able to do the Rubicon with you guys here sometime soon. Yeah, dude, make it out here. We'll take you through in a heartbeat. I'm also going to be hitting you up for to go on a wheeling trip to Iceland soon. So, yeah, man, you signed me up. I'm there in a heartbeat, dude. I got room on my credit card. I'm ready to go, bro. Let's do this. That's great. Jimmy, any final words for everybody out there?
I think one of my large takeaways from this wonderful episode with Justin is to get a better understanding, or everybody needs to have a better understanding of working loads versus braking strengths, and pay attention to that whenever you're looking to buy some recovery equipment.
Yeah, man. And with that, my friends, keep crawling.
There's this well-known bar out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
And the cops always hang out in front of the bar and get drunk drivers or people being reckless or anything like that.
Okay.
Right? The cops are just trying to keep the streets safe.
Okay.
So this one day, this cop's hanging out there, and this guy stumbles out of the bar. Just can't find, tries his keys in multiple different cars, stumbling around, eventually finds his car.
Is this a story about Chris?
Maybe.
Oh, okay.
Gets in his car, seems to be fumbling around in the car, turning on his headlights, turning them off, turning his wiper blades off, turning them off, barely even starts the car at one point, and then stops it and then starts it again. And instead of reversing, drives forward a little bit, and is just futzing around, and then pretty much stops. Right.
Okay.
And during that time of everything that was happening, pretty much everybody has left the bar.
Okay.
And so, once all the cars are gone, the guy starts his car up and starts to drive away.
Okay.
And so the cop's like, all right, here we go. So he gets in there and he pulls the guy over.
Okay.
And the cop gives him a DUI checkpoint test, gives him the breathalyzer, and everything is fine. And the cop goes, I'm going to have to ask you to come to the station. My equipment seems to be failing. And he goes, no, sorry, cop. I'm the DD, the designated decoy. I'm totally sober.
Oh, man. Okay. So everybody else got away.
Everybody got away.
Sounds like my life.
Uh-huh.
And the designated
the
decoy
DD.
and the DD.